Welcome everyone. Of course, you are in the GeoComm presentation here. We're going to take a side step from the last one that you may have watched, and we're going to actually talk about indoor location maps. And just as a little bit of an overview for what we're going to speed through in the next about 15 minutes. Of course, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more, so I'm not just a random voice talking to you over the computer. We're going to talk about why indoor maps are important, understanding really what they bring it to offer, how our experience in the industry has given us the tools to understand the real challenges that come with having indoor maps and how you can mitigate them. And then I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of the future in 3D mapping. It may seem extremely futuristic, but it's really just around the corner. And one other thing, I am going to talk very quickly. I do that in real life as well. I live in Northern California, but I'm from Colorado. And so we're a pretty quick paced people. And I also know this is being recorded. So you can just like slow it down to half speed and then I'll be talking at a regular person's pace. So here's just a little bit of my background for anybody who wants to read. Basically, I am a data nerd when it comes to GIS data. And I've been with GeoComm for a number of years now, started as a GIS specialist and analyst, working specifically on NG data sets, as well as developing the 2D indoor mapping for GeoComm. Very exciting. This is definitely my baby. And the amount of situational awareness you can get from having indoor maps is just incredible. So thank you all for spending the time with me for the next about 11 minutes. And if there's any questions at the end, shout them out. If we don't have time, you're welcome to send me an email at my contacts on the last page here. All right, so why 2D maps? We're going to just dive into what we're all familiar with already, right? Uber can find me, 911 can't. There's all these kinds of complaints because while our motto is seconds matter, often the lack of location information causes us to lose those seconds that do matter. To make matters worse, of course, we are all based on landline phones. That's the best way to get a location right now. But unfortunately, 80% of calls are placed from cell phones, which means that there's not a landline address associated, right? And on top of that, with calls coming from cellular devices, 64% of all wireless calls come from indoors. So not only can we have difficulty finding a cell phone in the first place, but now we have all of the indoor nonsense that we have to get through as well, including your location being changed or received differently based on the structure of the building, right? So because of all of this difficulty and the cell phone networks, the FCC put in extra guidelines to help get the actual data available upgraded to assist in emergency response. And now that we have this additional information, now we need the indoor building details to be able to actually utilize that information in such a way that we can respond to incidents with a greater awareness of what's going on. I'm not going to go into detail on this slide. Again, you can watch the recording and pause if you really want to watch all of these details. But what I really wanted to say was, although indoor mapping may seem slightly futuristic, all of these developments have been in the process and in the works for about 5 years now. So the data is there for you. It's now up to you to utilize it in such a way that you can have very fast and powerful response, right? So along with that, this is just a little teaser of what an indoor map looks like, right? The FCC is adamant on increasing situational awareness and getting those locations. There's technology such as Rapid SOS that gives you the device hybrid location now even. So you can see as close as if somebody's on the left side or the right side of a staircase. So gone are really the days of these large confidence circles, but you can actually get down to the device location within a few feet. Very, very exciting. So understanding indoor mapping, and I'm going to give you 3 quick steps to use so that way you can jumpstart your creation and use. Because even though this seems like it may be above and beyond your capabilities, maybe you're not a GIS person, That's fine. You are going to be a GIS person by the end of this presentation, and you'll be able to understand how to put these together. So the first step is actually going to be talking about the benefits of 2D indoor maps, right? So we already talked about the better situational awareness for responders, but we also need to talk about which buildings are we going to put these indoor maps into, right? Selecting your high priority buildings and or ones with complex interiors. So unfortunately, schools are very high target right now. So schools are often some of the first ones that PSAPs will think about and elect to create these indoor maps for. But other ones may include convention centers, airports, bus stations, train stations, places where lots of people congregate and the interiors are not predictable. All right, so the step one of the 3 steps that I promised is actually to consider your mapping application and the requirements contained within, right? So it's great that you can make these indoor maps, but if you don't have a way to present them, then you really aren't able to use them, which makes sense, right? This is pretty remedial stuff. But this is the first question to ask when you're looking at integrating indoor mapping. Can you have rapid SOS locations? Do you have a mapping system that can ingest custom GIS layers? Now that was the key that I just dropped, custom GIS layers. This isn't some black magic. Indoor maps aren't something different. They are simply points, lines, and polygons. And your mapping, whether it's a CAD mapping system or a 911 call taking map, needs to be able to ingest custom layers to be able to present your indoor maps that you make, right? And then the next step of your 3 is understanding the impacts, right? So right now, many of you may have footprints for the buildings, which is great because now you can see really where the buildings are versus where the rest of the land is around them, right? But when you can integrate an indoor map, now you can see where are entry points, where are the rooms. You can search by room name. So that way, when, say, a student at an elementary school calls 911 and says, I'm in Mrs. Frederick's room, that's not something you can include and type into your CAD system right now and get a feedback, right? You can't just be like Mrs. Frederick's room and then go poof, and there it is. You probably won't be able to do that. But having the GIS data built out in such a way that you can have those attributes included, you can have that data included, it would make it possible. So you can type in and search custom to the indoor locations of the buildings. So just as you're able to search address points, now you can search inside address points, which is incredibly cool. So again, this is without indoor maps, right? You can see your cell phone plot and the circle of competence. And here we see that target is actually to the low right, and that is the rapid SOS location. So that's where the caller actually is, even though our ring of confidence says elsewhere, right? This is not uncommon. We're all very familiar with this happening, but this is a good example of it. And in the next 3 slides, I want you to pay particular attention to the red circles that are going to be on the right side on that floor picker line. So here we are on level 1 with indoor maps. And you can see the cell phone makes it look like they're perhaps in a mechanical room somewhere, except for that, if we look at the rapid SOS location, we can see they're really not actually existing inside of a room on this floor, right? So even if the caller didn't know what level they were on, we'd be able to logically deduce they are not on level 1. So we go down to basement 1. Maybe they're in the pool, could be in the pool, right? And you can see that now there's an entryway to the high left side that you'd be able to walk directly to the pool from, right? But if we go down 1 more level to the basement 2, there is potential that person could be in the tunnel below. Now, tunnels may not be something that your first thought goes to for indoor maps, but they actually are pretty common in a lot of older buildings, which is also kind of cool. And then another aspect of having indoor maps and finding a way to integrate them into your mapping is to actually have the ability to put them on at the same time as your aerials. So now not only do you get that indoor view and all of that additional awareness, but you can also see what does the actual landscape look like around that building. So you're able to get this superior situational awareness by layering and toggling with transparencies. All right, so now you know why you need indoor maps and how they can assist you. And then step 3 of the 3 promised ones is to determine what resources are needed for you to get started. So of course, funding is always like the chime that we all ring. But I will tell you that indoor maps are not nearly as expensive as they probably seem. Even though they do seem very future and fancy, the price is actually very attainable for many places. The next step for you personally is to think about what key buildings are in your response areas. I touched on this earlier. It's things like schools, airports, convention centers, anywhere where people congregate that the insides are complex and unpredictable. And then the third step before you can start in your adventure to making indoor maps is to find floor plan resources. How are you going to know where the walls are? You need to be able to get that information from somewhere. Many schools will also be happy to assist you if there happens to be no floor plan to make an actual school event out of it, and they help map out their own school. Also a really great way to get 911 in the community. So I'm just going to give you 4 quick examples of what your source files might look like. So you could have a scanned PDF. This one's nice and clean. You have labels, right? It's pretty square. You probably believe that this is true to form. AutoCADs are also great. And then you get these like massive DWG AutoCAD files, right? Where we have computer aided drawing here instead of dispatch. And they may look like a mess, but you can actually strip out the walls from that and create incredibly useful floor plans. So that way you can build all of your 2D indoor maps off of these floor plans that are known to be accurate. So just as a quick highlight, this may be rudimentary, but it is worth noting. Effective floor plans, again, are clean, concise, they're accurate, they're not warped in any way, right? Ineffective floor plans are things like you took a ruler to a piece of paper or you like drew it on a napkin and slid it across the table. All right, I've seen that happen a couple of times. So do, when you are in your adventure to making your indoor maps, find good resources. And as somebody who has built these, having that extra time in finding a good resource is always paid back in full and multiples if you just put in the work ahead of time to find a good resource. So GeoComm, because of our experience in 2D indoor mapping and the problems that come for a lot of agencies, it really boils down to just a couple of things to keep in mind. So one is something as simple as the floor picker, like we said, right? Most buildings are more than one floor. And the ability to toggle between floors is incredibly important. So no matter what system you're putting your data layers into, remember these are just custom GIS data layers. That's all it is. Points, lines, and polygons create everything in our mapping. So whether you're going to try and integrate that into your CAD for your CAD map, you have a call taking map or what have you, getting those layers in and having a way to choose between them. And whether you have a floor picker or an ability to turn off and on separate layers, both of those could work, but it is something that you're going to have to think about. And then, of course, the second part is being able to actually visually represent the indoor spaces. Can you visually support it in your map? Are you able to turn it on only at a certain zoom level so that way you're not totally rendering all of these little tiny polygons all the time, right? Can you have it turn on just when you get to that area? And then, of course, just as we've touched on already, having it in such a way that your data can be supported in both local and cloud environments. So for GeoComm, our products are both and able to have those custom GIS layers. Remember, that's the keyword. And because of that, your indoor maps are able to be used no matter your environment, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. So just as a little teaser to get you excited, I realize that 2D indoor maps may not be everybody's favorite thing in the world, but they are incredibly cool. And making them puts you one click away from 3D mapping, which looks insanely cool. because Z-level access is coming very soon to be very accurate for cell phones. Very soon, right? Already we can get within 3 meters or so. So this is really, the data is already here to support this kind of work, but our mapping has to come up to meet it. Having your 2D indoor maps, you literally in one click could make a 3D map and get into this level where now you can actually search vertically and move your map in such a way that you get additional awareness. So like I said, in 2019, you can have this vertical access. And we already had a 3D model for the Super Bowl. So this is not something that has not been done already, but it is actively in use for the PSAPs that want it. So 3D, again, may seem very much futuristic and maybe utopian even, but it is already here. And if you really wanted, you could already make the leap. Much easier though to just start with your 2D indoor maps and get your dispatchers used to having this additional awareness and have that freedom to be able to make this leap into just incredible support in the future down the road, right? All right, so that's it. This was a really quick overview of indoor maps and what's possible in GIS, and just really want to empower you that it's points, lines, and polygons. It's address points, road center lines, and boundaries, right? That's all that GIS is. And using those in unique ways is how you're able to make indoor maps and all sorts of other information that is so highly critical, specifically for situational awareness and making all of those seconds matter. So thank you all for listening. Like I said, you can watch the replay and put it on half speed and maybe it'll be a regular person talking.
Very excellent, Annalise. Are you open for questioning?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if anybody has questions, be sure to unmute your mics and go for it. I have one question. Do you work with companies like IBWave who map the RF signals in buildings?
Not directly. Not directly, but I do, for additional information on that, I can connect you with our VP of Innovation, because those kinds of integrations are definitely under his wing. But as far as GeoComm and indoor maps, we really specialize in just the creation and implementation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're too shy to shout it out to, you can put it in the chat.
Well, I guess that everybody's quiet, so thanks again.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure. And hopefully everybody is not quiet just because they're like, you know, shell shock.
I don't know.
But all right. Well, thank you all again. And I hope you have a great rest of your conference. Thank you, Larry, for your time.
Thank you.